Hi and welcome to Mike's V8 Garage. This time I'm going to start sorting out my brake calipers, starting by refurbishing a set of fronts. So one of the first things I noticed when I got the Lexus was that the brakes were okay but not particularly good, and the car tended to have a bit of a pitch forward under braking. Now I know the GS's in particular, across all the generations, have got a bit of a reputation for sticky rear calipers, so the pitching forward was kind of explained, I thought, by the rear calipers being a bit sticky. But one of the first things I did with the car was to put a full set of pads and discs on front and rear, and one of the things I noticed about the front calipers was that they were also sticking a little bit in the pistons, and also some kind previous owner had cross-threaded the caliper mounting bolts, so they had actually stripped the thread slightly. So I managed to get them back on at the time, but that immediately shot up the priority list to get sorted fairly quickly, because I don't like having brakes that are a little bit iffy. So what I'm going to do now is cover the full refurbishment of a set of calipers I've got to refurbish and then straight away swap with the ones on the car, because it's a daily driver, I can't have it off the road. And the next video, because that takes a bit longer than I thought, will be refurbishing a set of rears in exactly the same fashion. So that'll be after this one. Anyway, moving on to the fronts. So these are the front brake calipers I'm going to refurbish due to mine being a bit sticky. Not bad units, to be honest. I mean, you can see they're 4-piston, and as I've just checked there with a magnet, aluminium as well, front and back, so reasonably lightweight and quite effective little units. These I got for about £100, which is what I thought wasn't too bad myself. A little bit rusty in the pistons. Obviously the outside needs a complete going over, which is fine. I've got some paint arriving for that. But the intention now is to get these apart and have a look at the pistons and the seals and see what I need to replace. But overall, they don't look in bad condition. Plus they came with a full set of shims, plates, pins, and then I've got one of the little clips you can see there, little spring clip pins rather, but the other one's gone, so I'll get replaced in that. But that's not massive drama. But in terms of getting them apart, all I need to do is undo the brake line that's still attached for some reason. Gives me a spare banjo bolt, I suppose. And then, I forgot there would still be fluid in them, but never mind. But then all I need to do is put something in place just to protect the pistons from flying out too far. And then, with some compressed air I prepared earlier, use both hands. There we go. I should have at least popped some of them out. One at least. Well, that's them all out, which I couldn't do one-handed, but you got the idea. And all in all, the bores are in really good condition. But getting the pistons out was a bit of a pain, because obviously you put pressure on overall and one of the pistons pops out, and then after that you've got an easy escape. So what I had to do is a combination of clamps holding down the remaining pistons and an arbor plate from a press just clamped with a G-clamp against one bank, and basically just work my way around popping each piston out and then taking the seal off, putting it back in, clamping it in place. And then, like I said, clamping 3, popping one out, replace, clamp the other 3, pop another one out, and so on, and so on, and so on. Got a bit tiresome, but fairly simple, just a bit of effort. And the pistons have all come out, and although they're dirty just now, I'm about to give them a clean. The actual surface of the bore, rather, of the piston are all in good nick. They're a bit rusty on the end, but a bit of green Scotch-Brite and a little bit of rubbing will get that sorted. Possibly do something with the inside, but again, that's just cosmetic. Functionally, these are all in good nick. And just a quick note while I'm stripping these down, always worth investing in a set of picks or something like that. Just so useful for getting in, especially things like this where you're taking out seals and so on. And just working it in, and then ping, out it comes. Really useful. So everything gets a bit of a clean up tonight. Just using brake cleaner so it doesn't start to flash rust or anything. And then the next step will be get them in the blast cabinet, give them a blast off, and then paint them. But yeah, impressed so far. Appears to be in really good nick. Happy with that. Well, after a good hours or so scrubbing, I can guarantee this thing's been refurbed. These are all absolutely brand new seals. The shims look fairly good. The caps have cleaned up nicely, and this one especially, you can tell this is a pretty much brand new piston. It's barely even had time to rust on the inside, whereas some of the others are a little bit more what I'd expect of the age. Bear in mind these have all been cleaned up. But the point is, there's a real disparity. There's about 3 or 4, maybe more, of these pistons look very fresh, and the others aren't too bad. Brand new seals. And then finally, there is absolutely no way those are the original bleed nipples, because those things are immaculate. So it looks like what I've managed to get is a set of refurbished calipers that just didn't have anything applied to the outside. So that's really useful, because what I can do now is just clean them up, blast them, paint them, put them all back together, and we're good. The only bad news is that one of the brand new seals managed to split when I was taking it off, which I hadn't noticed before. Obviously that's a lot bigger now. The annoying thing is, I think they only sell them as complete sets, so it looks like despite these being brand new seals, I am going to have to get a seal kit, which is frustrating, but not the end of the world. And the good thing is, if I do break any of the new seals putting them in, well, it's not like I don't have a lot of spares. Well, in the end I didn't end up sandblasting these, partly because of convenience, because I've got a little in the sleep upstairs and a 200 litre compressor, an extractor and a dust a media blaster going at the same time is a little bit antisocial. But also because these things are aluminium, as long as I can get them actually back to a bare metal surface, and the standard finish, I don't need to actually paint the whole thing. It's not like they're going to rust. So really what I'm after is a cosmetic effect of painting the visible parts, and therefore I don't need to sandblast them all and create a lot of extra work for myself. But as you can see, the bores and the piston inserts cleaned up really well. They're in really good condition. A judicious bit of brake clean and cotton buds or Q-tips cleaned out the lands in between where the seals sit, so those, after a lot of effort, have come clean. And then after that, the whole thing was dipped into a bucket of degreaser and then agitated around. That's from last night. I'm filming this the day after. And then a little bit of acidic wheel cleaner just to remove the last of the brake dust, and then a little bit of wire brushing, most primarily with one of those. Brought it back to the finish you see now, and in all the areas I'm going to paint, this is basically completely free of grease, dust, dirt, brake dust, etc. It's been rubbed down afterwards, and it is basically good to go. I'm only going to be painting really from this back part forward and underneath, probably down to about that line there, all the way along. So it doesn't really matter about all the rest of it being exposed, and as you can see, the original finish is still pretty good. So as I said, sandblasting these would have just been really a bit pointless and unnecessary. I'm not aiming for perfection, and these are going to sit in the car at the end of the day. One thing I have got that's a bit more useful though, when I start to reassemble these, is a load of brake clamps, and seeing as I've got the remains of the brake hoses there, it's worth just seeing how these things operate. So let's get them positioned. There we go, ready to go. Clamp. If I'd have had a few of these a while ago when I was doing all the brakes on the XKR, spring loaded as well, just to release, that would have been really useful. But as you can see, very effective, and that will minimise fluid loss when I come to actually put these back on. But anyway, back to the calipers. One done, Another one still to go, which, don't get me wrong, it's broadly clean, but it just needs a good degrease and run through. And then it's on to paint, and for that it's going to be high temp caliper black, but satin finish, and then a clear lacquer that should maintain that satin finish. And then we've also got some decals to put on as well. So I'll put the first few layers of paint on, put the decals on, let all of that cure for a bit, and then put the lacquer on top just to firstly protect the paint but also protect the decals and try and keep them decent. And after about half an hour of scrubbing, not perfect as I said, but it doesn't have to be. The main thing is all the bores are good and the area that's to be painted is nice and clean and free from grease. Next up, a little bit of 400 grit sandpaper, get rid of a rough, and then mask it, and then we're good to go. Ready for paint. Right, so now these are ready for paint. I just spent about an hour masking all the areas I don't want painted with masking tape, blocking off the holes, all the rest of it, and these are good to go. So they're both ready, they've both been cleaned. I'll give them a quick wipe down before I actually start to paint, just to get skin oil and stuff off them. The main issue I've got is, probably can't see that, but it's about 9 degrees in here just now, and ultimately with the VHT paint I'm using I want to be at about room temperature, about 20 degrees Celsius. So the way I've got to get around that one is a hairdryer. Warm up the paint, warm up the calipers, check the temperature every so often. As soon as everything's 20 degrees I'm good to go. It's what I've used to paint the Mustang bits that I've done so far, and it's turned out really well and the paint's adhered quite nicely. Otherwise I'll be waiting until summer or trying to do this indoors outside of my garage, which is not a good idea because of fumes. For that reason I'll be wearing one of these, and then also at the same time you can see behind me the curtains are drawn, and that's my little improvised spray bay, which when I close this curtain is completely contained. I can spray away to my heart's content, and I'm not going to get overspray all over the rest of the stuff in the garage, including engines, gearboxes, my tools and all the rest of it. And again I found a bit Heath Robinson, but that works quite well. First coat done. Now to wait for 10 minutes. Second coat. Mm. 10 minutes. Third coat. Okay, so that's the third coat done. There's one slight run on the top of one of them, which is annoying, but that's what happens. But other than that, it's looking okay. So now I'm going to give it a good 20-30 minutes to dry. Then get the decals on, and then a couple of very light coats of lacquer, which are going to get quite a bit of drying time in between to again minimise the runs. And that should be us done. Well, that's everything done. Final coat of lacquer's on, which I forgot to film. Now it's just a case of leaving them overnight and they should be perfectly fine in the morning, he says. But overall, I'm quite happy with how these have turned out so far. We should be good to go. I'll pick up the seals tomorrow. All the rest of the stuff's been done, is good to go. So really, it's just a case of pick up those seals, rebuild them, and then a case of sticking them on the car, which is pretty simple. Yeah, quite happy with that. Well, it's the evening after the evening before, and I've got to say, I'm quite happy with the way it's turned out. I had a bit of worries about the right hand caliper where there was a bit of a run and a few dinks in it, but I laid on the lacquer a little bit more thickly and then held it upright to cure just so it didn't start running, and that has actually had a really good effect. It's a really good finish now, really smooth on the surface faces of both of them. So in terms of good enough for a daily driver, absolutely. And like I said, because I left off all the back and the other areas that didn't really need paint, because as I said it's aluminium, it saved a lot of time and effort, albeit I did have to mask up a fair bit more than I normally would. But as I said, the main thing is you can probably see it from there, the areas where the pistons are going to go, the bores, and the surrounding area where the seals nestle into are absolutely immaculate. So now really it's just reassembly. And I've just been out today and picked up the new seals, the new internal seals, which already come pre-greased, which is interesting, never seen that before. A new clip for one of these pins, also these pins have now been fully wire brushed. Same thing with the clips. And I've also had to go over the pistons, although that's pretty much one of the new ones, but that was one of the worst ones before, and as you can see that's pretty clean. So now what I need to do is get all of these seals mounted on the pistons, which is pretty simple. Just a case of feed them in, get them seated around the lip of the piston, and then once they're in there it's a case of folding them up so that they sit proud of the piston itself, basically like that. And then all I need to do is, when I'm ready and I've got the inner seals in and got them all greased up and all the rest of it, you literally just slide those in, mega easy, and as the piston settles this seal will seat itself, and as you pop it over it will quite literally just pop into place around the lip of the bore, which again is so much simpler than other calipers I've done, where in one case I had to glue the ends of the seals down to get them to stay in place. Honda, I'm looking at you here. So again, really nice touch, and overall I've got to say, as a fairly basic set of brakes of their time, albeit 4-piston, there's some really nice touches about the design of these. It just makes them a lot easier to work on. So that's the next job, get all these seals on, get them all greased up, get these inner seals mounted, which is just a case of feeding them into the lands that are created for the grooves that are created for them inside the bore, and it's plain sailing from there. So without further ado, I'm going to get cracking. Just need to be a little bit careful with these. There's 1, 4. So as simple as that, new seals on, and then we're ready to put them in the caliper, which should hopefully be as simple a case as grabbing the piston, just making sure there's no dirt or muck made its way onto it. You really don't want that in your caliper if you want your caliper to live. And then get it settled, gently, 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 just tease it into place, and it should just slide in. There we go, and that's in. And then I just pop the seal down, and as you can see there, and I'll get photos later, that is as easy as it gets. That's such a simple job compared to other calipers I've done. So thanks Lexus for that one thing. Not your prices, but thanks for this. As you can see, I'm having bits of trouble with 1 or 2 of the pistons, and the key thing is if it doesn't slide in smoothly, it's coming out and I'm looking at it and checking again and again, and only once it's slid in smoothly am I going all the way and locking it down. Potentially there's just a little bit of a mismatch there or something like that, but the point is I'm not forcing it in. It should slide in right up to the full depth without any issues. Case in point, that one just shifted slightly as it was going in. There we go. And that is one caliper rebuilt. New bleed nipple, new seals, and nicely fresh paint job. Now I just need to do that 4 more times and we're good to go. Bingo! Okay, so slight drama with that last piston, and in fact one of the other ones needed a slight touch just before it was able to go in smoothly. But the key thing is now all the pistons are lying level, all the seals are engaged. All it remains to do now is just give these a little bit of a clean off with some brake clean, get all the red rubber grease off the surface of them, and these will be good to install tomorrow night. So yeah, overall that's been a fairly easy process. As I said, 1 or 2 little snags with the paint, a couple of little rough pistons. The key thing is, like I said, the main surface of them was fine. It was just the sort of the top end where potentially been taken out either during the last refurb or potentially by myself. Not going to call it either way, but either way, sorted now. Job's good. The end result is something far better than the originals, which were as standard unpainted. Difference in braking is really noticeable. As said, it still pitches at the rear because I've yet to do the rear brakes, but the strength, the braking force at the front is noticeably better. It kind of feels where it should have been at the first place for a set of 4 piston calipers. So next episode is going to be moving on to the rear, which is not quite as easy, but wait and see how that goes. So hopefully you enjoyed that video. I certainly enjoyed doing it. I think the end result was well worth it. The rear calipers, as I said, are coming in the next episode, which I'm busy editing now. They are done, they're on the car, and the results were worth it, but it took a while. And it just remains to say, if you enjoyed what you saw, please give us a like down below, it really helps. Consider subscribing, and positive or negative, don't really mind either way. Comment down below what you thought and what you'd like to see. Thanks very much.